in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
It is Dr. Sean Thunder Wallace, ladies and gentlemen, and here we are again. Is that your middle name, Thunder, or do you have a middle name?
I do have middle names.
Oh,
I actually have two middle names, but
okay.
Thunder is a nickname. That's a name my dad gave me.
And your middle names are they public or those are hidden? Those are behind the.
Oh, I mean, it's public record. People can find me if they want.
Okay.
Michael Terry.
Terry does go, yeah, with the light skin, I guess. But anyways, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. It sounded right from movies and stuff, I guess.
Of the two of us, I think clearly you're the light skin. So.
Yeah, that part escaped me too. That was a. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, click that like button. Click the share as well. We're gonna be talking about tuning stuff. There's been a lot of failures in the, shall we say, news lately. Markets, certain things going bust. Talking about economic downturns and this and that and the other. And we know that, however, to be successful is to take all these quote unquote failures and use them as lessons, learn from them. So the idea of the mind then comes into question in terms of, because it's the mind that has to be that thing that carries you through this ups, downs, lefts and rights and whatnot. Okay. There'll be a lot of perturbation, right? That's going on. So what is supposed to be this steady and constant thing, Dr. Thunder? The girding up of your loins, but if I'm making sense there, then it does bring forward the fact that to succeed at something, there's a huge aspect that has to do with what we typically call the mind, right? Do you like that word though, the mind, in terms of like success, like in terms of like if you could intuit where this thing might go, which I don't know where it's going, but we're going to be reviewing a video. Tuning your mind for success sounds like the kind of thing that what do you think about that? Let's just talk about the marketing so far.
It's like an automobile thing, like tuning the engine. It's I mean I can see the sort of mass marketing appeal of such a phrase. But my tendency is to stand a bit away from such shiny objects.
So if I dare to interpret, the dimension that you're talking about right now is the woo dimension. You tend to stay away from the more and more woo any language or description, symbol or approach gets.
Yeah, it just seems like they're trying to compensate for something.
Yeah. Shout out to Eisen in the building. Shout out to you. Okay. So this is a channel I found. I guess I should give it in terms of this is a clip from some other interview, right? But it's from this channel over here that I will.
Are you
Okay.
talking about All In Podcast?
Oh yeah, the All In podcast is so Chamath Palihapitiya is a billionaire that is one of the 4 in the All In podcast. Do you know the All In podcast, or is it just because I have it in the?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know it.
But by the way, perhaps I should say something about it. But you know, after we start playing a little bit of this, after you kind of like
Sure.
see Chamath here. But basically, it's made up of 4 people, right? All in the tech venture capital space. Okay, one of them was the founder, was the first, you know, COO of PayPal, and then founded Yammer and certain other things. Another one, you know, sold a $1 billion company to Monsanto and stuff like that. They're all kind of like in that. They're all billionaires, right? But also pretty good communicators. And obviously have some common sense in terms of, you know, can't be a dummy and be making money the way they make money, right?
Right.
So Chamath is one of the 4 there, but let's just play a little bit of this, and I can recommend the podcast later.
As an investor, I think in order to be extremely successful, you have to understand both your strengths, but also your biases. And then you have to tune your style of investing to a type of market that benefits from those strengths and where you can control your biases. So, you know, in my example, very early on at Facebook, and then in the early parts of Social Capital, what I proved to myself is that I had quite a bit of a knack of being early to things, early to trends, early to ideas, being able to iterate and build, you know, small versions of things that could then grow and become big things. And that gave me a lot of confidence that I generally could see a little bit around the corner before a lot of others, not, you know, years before, but months before. And that's enough of an edge, right? So that was a strength. You know, my bias is really that I tend to be very dogmatic around certain ideas. And so I had to find a way where I could minimize my losses. And the different way of saying that is I had to always think about returns as the Northern Star, irrespective of what I invested in. And so technology investing, early stage technology investing, actually brings these 2 principles together into one.
Okay. Now there's quite a bit that I would like to unpack there in terms of what I hear.
I've got a few things too. Go ahead.
Okay. If we just kind of start chronologically, the first thing I noticed is talking about strengths and then biases, which I liked because a lot of times, or I think it's more in line with the looking at a strength and then also looking at the blind spot of a strength. Not this basically strength versus weakness thing, but basically looking at a strength and then looking at the blind spot of the strength, right? Which you can't count amongst your weaknesses, but basically then he said that, you know, finding a market, an arrangement, a situation, something that you, whatever, like you're going to bring value, you know, you find a value marketplace, a value game place that values your particular strength, but also in which you can block your blind spots or mitigate your blind spots or whatever, right? But anyways, go. What were your initial observations?
So a couple of things. One is just sort of a cheap Office reference, and that is I just was thinking about when Michael was interviewing for the corporate job, which was the job that his girlfriend actually occupied. He didn't understand that it was that position, and so Michael Wallace, basically the what is he, the COO or CEO or something of the company, he asked Michael, he says, what are some of your weaknesses? And Michael says, I am too hardworking. I'm too, he says a bunch of stuff that, like this. And then Michael says, okay, well, what about your strengths? He says, well, my weaknesses actually are strengths. They. So I thought that was funny. And one thing I thought was interesting is when he was starting out and he was talking about basically compatibility. He was talking about matching interests with a particular job. And it reminded me of another sort of parallel conversation. Well, it's not at all related, actually. It's a conversation, though, in a very different, very different medium, and that is this argument that BGS Ibmore frequently makes about how it used to be that both men and women were conditioned and for marriage. They were trained to be wives and husbands, and the duty aspect of the institution is what they were prepared for, right? When you want a partner, then it's much more about good fit, right? It's much more about knowing yourself, having interest in common, and all of that kind of stuff. So I thought that was interesting. These days, because of all of the possibilities in the different kind of jobs and things, a lot of these kind of conversations are far more about, but do you like your job? And in the past, nobody cared if you liked your job. You were just happy to have a job, right? And hopefully the job at least had paid well enough and there was enough, insurance and benefits and stuff like that to take care of your family. So that was the important thing about a job. Who likes a what is it when you're working in a warehouse? What is it, or a plant or something? You're on the conveyor line or whatever.
Assembly line.
Yeah, assembly line. Nobody's asking those guys, do you like your work? Oh, I really love putting this one leg in this hole here. This is my favorite thing to do, so much that I do it 5,000 times a day or something. So I just thought that was interesting, not to poke too much of a hole in things, but the sort of matching your interests with whatever the job is or whatever the style of market is. It seems to me that in order to excel, you're going to have to do a bunch of stuff you don't want to do. And it seems to me like being okay with that and not trying to figure it out right from the jump, and just, so in other words, duty, being more about duty, and then as things develop, then you can maybe grow into something. You can grow to love what you do. You could grow in a particular direction, but I don't know how you're going to predict necessarily that something's what you want to do if you're not willing to,
Yeah,
that's my
those are
general
great.
thought. Yeah.
Yeah, those are great observations, and I don't think he would even disagree with you. I mean, I don't think, because those, what you
No, I don't think
stated
you would either.
are pretty and it's interesting that you went for the interest, but if this is not an early lesson, which is one way of interpreting, which is like, okay, this is not this is for much later down the road when you're not doing subtle things, right? But there is something very important about knowing your strengths, right? Which is kind of what as opposed to not necessarily interests, right? But strengths, because strengths tend to be, at least the way I would be measuring this particular thing, it would be more of a general thing, right? Like your strength could be abstraction, for example, right? It is a general thing. So in which whatever field you're in, you got to know that, okay, whatever it is I'm doing, my particular thing that I know I'm good at is abstraction, right? Or I'm a numbers guy. I fucking you get what I'm saying, right? So and
Right,
it
right.
doesn't so much define job field like not like, right? So after you've sorted all through all that crap and you're in you're in the big leagues, then you really got to know this strength, but also the blind spot of the strength. Because
Yeah.
if I may, in typical fashion now, as we continue to review this very short video, anyways,
It'll be a 5-part series.
the idea here is if, for example, if I'm harkening back to a very recent conversation, if, for example, someone's particular strength is in really understanding, or let me start from the opposite side. If your strength is in really kind of figuring out what to do, like problem solver, like how to get out of situations, how to that thing, right? You might have that particular strength has a consequential blind spot of perhaps cutting through people's feelings. Now I know this is a particular, it's not the most consequent or important kind of dichotomy here I'm describing in terms of strengths and the blind spot of a strength. But the same thing is true of the other person too, whom is very well attuned to people's feelings. They tend to run into issues actually solving problems too,
Mm.
So it's like if you end up being in one of these buckets, it's best to know that, okay, cool, either I'm this kind of steamroller problem solver guy, but if I don't pay attention to what it does in terms of like people's feelings, and this is more, let's say, my lane, right? I can't just go around ignoring people the way that I would just naturally would, right? You know what I mean? Like, like that will not be, that is not a good thing. And it's something that I have had to kind of learn, pay attention to with people whom are more into the, let's just call it group feeling, extroverted feeling, being good with people, being good politicians, whatever, and keeping up, blah, blah, blah. I'm learning a lot from them has been part of my growth process, right? I'm never going to be them, but it's just like, okay, and they're not going to be me with what I do, right? It's just that I know that, okay, my particular sword here, my particular blade here has this particular weak spot or obvious blind spot, because it can't be everything, right? It can't be a sword and a ball and chain too, right? Or am I making sense there? Or
Yeah.
Indeed. So let's
Yeah.
play this again, because okay, I think we went, okay, yeah, let me see
the video.
As an investor, I think in order to be extremely successful, you have to understand both your strengths, but also your biases. And then you have to tune your style of investing to a type of
Do you have any
market
particular biases, Dr. Thunder?
that benefits from those
Oh, yeah.
strengths and where you can control your biases.
Maybe I can learn and do the type of thing that so let me start and see if I can articulate a bias that I have without it being, without sounding like one of those weaknesses or biases that it's like really my bias is, I see too far into the future.
Right.
I kind of, whatever it is. Okay. So if I could just kind of enumerate them, because they don't necessarily have to be bad or good yet. Let me just try to kind of shotgun here. I tend to be biased towards the negative side of particular incidents, right? But long haul, I'm very optimistic. Like, whether you want to call it long haul or big picture, I'm an optimist. But I'm always shorting. It's like I'm long in the market and longer, but I'm always shorting, hedging. That is definitely one of a particular lean that I have. Again, if we go to that I have a blind spot for understanding the kinds of meanings and relevance that people attribute to certain social norms, mores, etiquette, things like keeping up with people, this, da, 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 right? I tend to, and it's not just a question of, I just can't seem to pay attention to that stuff. Part of it is the attention, but it's a constitutional kind of thing where it's like I tend to discount the importance of that stuff because the way I live my life or the way I get my stuff done, I tend not to use that a lot, right? I don't know if that's making sense, right? Because you get biased,
And
that's
then
why it's
in
like
the
a
early
bias
parts of
too. I'm sorry, because you do your thing and it works, and you're like, why do I have to do this other? I don't have to do this other thing, and I already know it's kind of sticky and messy, and people and this and that, and it doesn't, what I'm doing is working, that kind of thing. So now that's but I also have to know that that's obviously that's BS because you have to work with the system the way it is. And the human system is a
Right.
social system. If I just take myself out of the equation, it's not like I'm not a social network, but anyway, but just generally looking at objective reality for what it is and understanding that you it's not like you can do everything by yourself. Plus, you are a social animal, you're blah, 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 all that kind of stuff that you need to be able to mitigate those particular biases. What are some of your biases?
To that last point you just made, so you have the sort of two options. You could work for a big organization in which perhaps it's stable, but they're not going to probably do very much of the stuff that you want them to do, and it'll take very long for them to move in a particular direction. Mm-hmm. Or you can, start your own thing in which you can do everything you want to, but there's no stability, right? Mm-hmm. So those are like the kind of options there, which, then sort of working well with others and sort of following sort of cultural norms and all that kind of stuff becomes lesser important, and or you're establishing the culture because you're what is the phrase? You're the first iteration. What is it? You're
prototype, pioneer.
Yeah. That, well, there's that. There's it's something more axiomatic than that, but that's all right. But basically, that's the deal. So okay, so you have that. It's more about yeah. Okay, yeah. I'll let that go. Perhaps I'll.
Yeah. What are your biases, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely have biases. All of us do. So one of my biases is against sort of poppy type of stuff. When I mean popularity, marketing strategies that capitalized on very sort of low common denominator kind of stuff. I tend to be biased against that stuff. It tends to make me question certain things. I tend to be biased against, for instance, modern forms of things that don't seem to have a reason for existing. Progression just for progression's sake. I tend to be biased against that. I'm a traditionalist, right? So, however, obviously with certain respects, progression, of course, is important, and but I suppose it depends on what it is that we're talking about, right? Because perhaps certain things that are traditional, they're just wrong, so they just need to be improved. But the things that are traditional that work well and there's no reason to change them, then why are we changing them? I mean, you could
are there any
leave that
areas
like it is, huh?
Have there been areas of tension, for example, or is it something that you've had to like learn in terms of like, okay, cool, this is my particular kind of my strength? Because if you're someone that is kind of, if you tend towards tradition, then you know, the right path would be also to know why things are there and
Right.
understand,
Exactly.
therefore, and then you're going to get a
Exactly.
certain kind of perspective. So you're like, okay, that's my
Mm.
strength. However, in terms of
No.
now that being a blind spot, have there been any kind of how do you have to mitigate that in any kind of way? Because you're just mentioning now, obviously, that this need for
Well,
progress.
well, one thing I try to do uh, is I try to hedge against my blind spot.
Hmm.
So here's the way I do that. So first of all, you have to know what your blind spot is to be able to accomplish this. Right. So if I am a traditionalist, if I favor structure over chaos, for instance, if that's my tendency, then I need to build within the system some some flexibility.
Need to put a snake in the garden, to
Right.
channel my inner Jonathan Peugeot.
Yeah. So for instance, this is a pretty crude example, but it's a pretty frequent one. So say for instance, I am rehearsing music for a church service or something, and we're going to do 4 songs. All right. We do these 4 songs, and say 3 of them, it's really locked in. The structure is going to be the structure. As a matter of fact, if the structure doesn't stay, if we don't stay on the structure, then it's not going to sound good, because it's really challenging music. It's hard to play. There's a bunch of intricate sections. It's a bunch of nuance and stuff that trying to do that on the fly is probably not the best idea. It's probably best to let's just do it like the recording. Okay. So, you have charts. I've got charts, and everybody's notated and like that. So then the 4th song is something where the song is much simpler and the form is open, and whoever the leader is can make changes as they see fit. They can move about, and do what feels right in the moment.
Mhm.
Now, one thing I don't like, and this is probably, folks will see this as a bias. One thing I don't like is this assessment that somehow the Holy Spirit is more present in the moment than the Holy Spirit has been all along. So, for instance, I'm thinking, as I'm designing a set, as I'm doing, this is how many times through we're going to do it, I'm considering that in trying to be open and sensitive to the Holy Spirit, right? I'm trying to do things with excellence. I'm trying to do things as it makes sense. As something may occur to me in the moment, I take that as maybe an inspiration. Okay. So I design things in a certain way. Okay, this is all ready to go. And then all it takes is one person in the moment to say, hey, I'm catching the Spirit, and the Spirit is telling us to destroy all this work that we just did over the last 3 months, for the sake of a feeling that I have, that I'm going to say overrides your sense of things. It seems to me that the world is pretty organized, right? And it seems to me that in order to be so organized and so
Why don't you
structured,
just come out and tell, like, look, it's obviously like a ploy for, or like it's excuse making for chaos. It's okay, I'm going to
right,
be Dionysian or Dionysian, however you pronounce it, the god
right,
of wine. You're gonna do that thing, but you're gonna try to hide. It's like, if you're gonna be Dionysian, just go out there and say, like, hey, I was feeling myself or whatever, right? Don't
right.
come with
Yeah,
this.
but they won't. No. But they won't admit that. They won't admit that. It has become a. It's like it's a pet doctrine. It is a. And if you try to argue against it, there's no way to argue against it. I mean, you can argue against it, but you just end up looking like a stick in the mud, and like you're just not flexible. You're
Yeah,
not willing to see things another way. That's what it ends up.
yeah. There is no arguing, and that's why I was like, look.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it is what it depends on. Then just what are you willing to do about it? Me, I tend not to have the patience for that type of argument because I'm like, okay, well, when I see something, especially of a particular form and such, I,
Well, I just hedge. Well, but that's what I'm saying. I've had this.
yeah,
I've
I'm not
dealt with
asking
the
you to go
same
act a
issue
fool
so
at
much.
your church people or whatever, but I'm just we talk.
Yeah. But I've had this issue so much that it's caused me to develop this strategy. Okay, I'm going to compromise with you. We're going to do these songs this way, and I'm going to show them why those songs cannot be changed because it'll sound bad X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
Nobody's going to be happy with what it sounds like. Okay, and then I say, and then this is yours to do what you want to do with. So that way everybody gets what they want. And it's not like I don't like the idea of spontaneity. I mean, I'm a jazz musician. you know, so it's not like I don't understand the principles governing, the art of, creating in the moment. That's what I do. I mean, I have a book, published by Hal Leonard called How to Improvise Over Chord Changes. I understand what spontaneity is, so that isn't the issue. It's just the way that it gets defined, the narrow way that it is defined and controlled by one individual person, which seems to override anyone else's sense of what's actually happening in that moment. Because it's funny. It's like, well, I was just feeling the spirit. It's like, well, I wasn't feeling the spirit. Or yeah, I was feeling the spirit too. And the spirit said to stay on the farm. I'm saying so it's just
That kind of reminds me of yeah. Shout out to Dr. Doug. He hooked it up with a little beat thing. So shout out to you for giving me his contact. But
of course.
so I did the performance, right? And it was pretty good actually. Now obviously I did there was a lot of practicing that went in. I wanted the muscle memory to just be it wasn't just practicing to know in the head. I wanted to you get that whole thing of
Yeah. The
if you
subconscious,
wake
you
up
want
in
it
the
to
middle of
travel
the
down
night,
to
that kind of practice.
yeah.
'Cause I didn't want to
Yeah.
mess it up, and I haven't performed in a while, right? And it's like, oh wait, it's like you don't want to f that, the first dance stuff.
Right.
Don't want to f that up for her. So it all worked out, and also there was that thing about the improvisation is my point here, right? Improvisation, which happened, uh, I, in a certain way. But the fact that I had all that muscle memory and everything, and there was now more degrees of freedom because there's when you have that kind of really sharp in the zone muscle memory stuff, there's a part of it that is kind of like you're watching yourself. So
Hmm.
that kind of also will it frees up a dimension, right? No, just dimension meaning a space or thought, movement,
Yep.
whatever, play, whatever, right? Um, and without all the structure and the blah, 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 you're not gonna find that even to then see as an option. And not every option that you might see will you take. You might just still stay like because most of it is like, oh, I'm just gonna stay. Just gonna rather than go crazy with the notes, I'm just gonna kill the hell out of every note. You get what I'm saying, right? Where it's just like I'm gonna just. Anyways, we're nerding out here on a.
No, but so that's a bias. So I have a bias towards structure. I think I have a bias. Uh, I have a bias against small talk. That's it. And that's been a real challenge for me. And that is something that I have not. Well, I think I have found the solution for that problem,
Mm.
but basically it's just to avoid small talk.
Oh yeah, well,
It's-
yeah, I guess, but you're still going to communicate, and you're going to find a way not to make it weird. I guess it has something to do with that.
right. So if I can now an issue with that is it's really easy to scare people.
Mhm.
If people are just used to small talking, and I do what I think is my solution for this, which is just to jump really deep into something, you know, that's that's my solution. So
Well,
then
that's gonna scare them away. So really, you're still running away from small. You're running away.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, okay. You see, okay. Well, I won't. At least you tried. I would say for this time. But I'm like, you gotta try harder in terms of like, you might have to coax them in. You can't just throw them in the deep end, like, right off the bat.
Okay, so here's another thing. So my wife, she's like super, extroverted. So when we have gone to things and I don't know anybody, um, you know, she often will be like, "Hey, such and such likes, what's the name? Or such and such is into, music, or such and such is also a professor, or such and such is like this." See,
This is
she'll
pretty
set it
good
up like
advice.
that.
People can do research. In other words, like, hey, if you're this type of person, if you're Dr. Thunder's personality and you don't like to do, you can research on Pico. Like, you got a company meeting, go check their LinkedIn. This guy has like, some model cars in his office. You're like, oh, I like that too. And then, would you recommend that, or you think that's cheesy, Dr. Thunder?
No. I think I think for someone that is oriented as I am,
Mhm.
that is a survival technique.
Good.
That is survival right there, because any like a minute of small talk, it takes about a year off my life. It is very taxing. It is very difficult. Oh my goodness. I would rather watch paint drying. Oh,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and click that like button. The super chat function is working, by the way. We're talking about tuning your mind, okay? Tuning your mind. And so far, we talked about the strengths and biases, okay? And then let's continue. See what else we unearth.
Of social capital, what I proved to myself is that I had quite a bit of a knack of being early to things, early to trends, early to ideas, being able to iterate and build, small versions of things that could then grow and become big things. And that gave me a lot of confidence that I generally could see a little bit around the corner before a lot of others, not, years before, but months before. And that's enough of an edge, right? So that was a strength. My bias is really that I tend to be very dogmatic around certain ideas. And so I had to find a way where I could minimize my losses. And the different way of saying that is I had to always think about returns as the northern star, irrespective of what I invested in. And so technology investing, early stage technology investing, actually brings these two principles together into one art form or practice, which is you have to have this propensity to be slightly early before the mass market of other investors realize that something is important. And by being slightly early, so that's one of my strengths,
if I
you
can say
actually can do
something.
an incredible job.
So he said something I thought this is clever. In recognizing his bias as being that he tends to be dogmatic, he just changed what the goal was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He just changed what the priority was. So
Mm-hmm.
so you can remain dogmatic,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a different you have a different objective. And so the objective overrides the dogma without forcing you to change that you just tend to be dogmatic. And yeah, that's a clever way to work around that. Yeah.
It's like nice little mechanical sublimation. Doesn't involve much.
It's like when I try to scare people away from small talking. See, I
Good point.
really didn't. I didn't
Job of
really
risk
improve
management
myself.
by preserving an incredible amount of the upside of making an investment where you can generate these crazy returns, but where your downside is still 1x and you're really not losing that much money if you're wrong. And so it allowed me to manage to this tendency that I have to be a little sticky in things. And it allowed me to exploit the strength that I have of being a little bit early. And so that's how I run the business. For me, the Northern Star is returns. You must generate best in class returns across vintages, across asset classes, across security types. And that is the key differentiator of people that are exceptional. And that's what I would aspire to be able to look back and say to myself is that I'm really good at this craft. And I think in another 10 years, I'll know whether I'm really good or not.
Chamath goes on to say that throughout his wins and losses, when he places bets
Along the way here, some people might make a particular mistake, right? In other words, let's say if we were to kind of what he just said and what you just observed, if we were to kind of create it, kind of dichotomy in terms of like think something that you are, you know, you're passionate, okay, about something, but you're also kind of fixated on the particular aspect of the thing that you're kind of like passionate about. You can't shift your passion to be like, okay, cool, well, I'm gonna take the same passion. I love the industry, but objective markers such as who makes the best returns, that's what makes you a Warren Buffett or not, right? That kind of thing, right? I'm going to take the objective as opposed to people who are just like, oh, I'm so passionate about the numbers and the industry, and I'm a purist of a particular kind. Now, this is a particular take on purity, on purists in the sense that, okay, a purist in this particular regard would be somebody that cannot shift that particular passion or, you know, or whatever it is that they have and refocus it.
You just have to give them a project.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You just have to give them a project. That element is actually becomes an asset when they're working on a project. It's when they're they don't have any particular objective and they're also a purist. That's what because as a purist, it's like if you're constantly like refining and you don't really have a stated objective, you don't really have a goal, then you're going to end up,
it's interesting.
Working,
I had this conversation earlier today.
Just working against all of anything positive that could have been. But if you have a project, then it's like, okay, now all that stuff actually becomes an asset.
So you have to give these people project, like, because I was like, oh, some people make this particular mistake, and many do. In other words, many never get over this hump of being able to like, okay, cool, I'm gonna just kind of change the North Star here, and I'm gonna go for it, right? I'm not gonna be some kind of like, oh, whatever. I'm not gonna be a hipster about it. A hipster investor is like, no, I'm gonna go for this is the gold standard. This is how everyone is measuring it. Because I think part of it too, that purist thing. Let me not go into this other aspect yet. In terms of the aspect that you mentioned about the purist thing is, okay, if I get you correctly, will it be the case that some of these people we just need to be directed? Because this is the conversation I had earlier on today. Had something to do with, well, some people you just have to like set to a task, and they may be great, they may be world class in whatever this thing they're doing, but outside of that, they tend to not be very they tend to be a little rotorless, right?
Yep, there it is. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then
I'll tell you, a certain kind of person will be satisfied in just acquiring a bunch of different skills. They don't use them. They don't use the skills. It's like the person that is satisfied practicing scales. They don't learn any songs, but they just get in the practice room and they just keep practicing scales in different like abstract, rudiments and things. And there's a satisfaction because they're learning how to play at a certain level, and they can perhaps probably do a lot of stuff that other folks can't, but they can't play any songs. Right? So if you give yourself a project, so the song is the project, and then if you try to develop skills around playing the song, See, there you go. Now you're actually achieving something that's productive.
Mhm.
You're actually creating some new information, but then you're using the skills X, Y, and Z. The thing that I was trying to think of earlier is patient zero.
Patient zero. That's a oh, gotcha. Oh, gotcha. The patient. Okay, gotcha. The patient zero. Yeah, gotcha. Um, so
So if you can be patient zero, and then you can infect all the new people that you bring in. It's all the same virus, so you're good, right?
mhm.
It's your virus. You're patient zero. So
Shout out to adult supervision here. The power focus structure limitation, whether it be you talking about the music setup, right? That is about structure, and him
Mhm.
talking about the North Star of, okay, this is what people measure it in, and then that provides a channel, a guardrail. You talk about this too in terms of the focusing effect of decisions, if you will, right?
yeah,
Decisions,
that's right.
confidence, whatever, right? Um, and same thing I was kind of referring to in the performance I just did recently, where it's like, okay, it was still all about that all that structure there, and that focus and stuff was what made it good. It wasn't some kind of drunkenness. Anyways, let us. It wasn't the spirit, Dr. Thunder. Ouch.
in the market and has limited information, he has a mathematical poker strategy he uses. These quantitative methods are extremely important.
I just
It allows him to recover quickly from a loss.
gotcha. Hold on a second.
Moth goes on to say that throughout his wins and losses,
Must generate best in class returns across vintages, across asset classes, across security types. And that is the key differentiator of people that are exceptional. And that's what I would aspire to be able to look back and say to myself, is that I'm really good at this craft. And I think in another 10 years, I'll know whether I'm really good or not.
Chamath goes on to say that throughout his wins and losses, when he places bets in the market and has limited information, he has a mathematical poker strategy he uses. These quantitative methods are extremely important and allows him to recover quickly from a loss, especially in light of the recent economic headwinds.
The most important thing, if you don't have a
That's
good
the
toolkit to
purest
deal
thing.
with loss, is that now you have the loss aversion that may
What's the purest thing?
Okay, so see, this was what I was saying. So the dogma, right? So we're kind of loosely we're kind of
Mhm.
referring to the same sort of concept with dogma and purist,
Mhm.
right? See, the dogma is what allows him to have these calculations that can allow him to still, work things out. It's because he has a certain level of mastery. That's the dogma, right? So he's still able to use that, though it's productive because he is reset the North Star.
Mhm. Mhm. It's and at this level, risk management in general, risk management, target management, right? You're like, I'm, rather than just change the target, I'm gonna have systems in place. In this particular case, all kinds of kind of hedges and stuff like that in his
Right.
fractal calculations to manage my risk, right?
So he
Manage
still
those-
gets to express that. So he has a strong desire
Mhm.
to be able to utilize that.
Yeah.
And that's where he gets to express that.
Mhm.
Though it isn't just spinning his wheels and turning around in circles. He's actually going somewhere.
Good point.
may affect the next decision. You may actually become emotional, which could affect the next decision. In combination, or even in
Okay, so I think you just started talking about like lose if you make a loss, right? Because if you don't, if you screw it up, then you start going down the rabbit hole of bad decisions and emotionality. But let's see.
These quantitative methods are extremely important and allows him to recover quickly from a loss, especially in light of the recent economic headwinds.
the most important thing, if you don't have a good toolkit to deal with loss, is that now you have the loss aversion that may affect the next decision. You may actually become emotional, which could affect the next decision. In combination, or even in any one of those two alone, can cause bankruptcy. Right? You lose money. And poker is a great microcosm of that, because that dynamic can play itself out in a 2 or 3 hour session. So the reason I love it so much Obviously, there's camaraderie, and I love the competition. I mean, look, I'm an extremely competitive person. There's no doubt about it. And I love crushing people, and I love crushing souls at poker. But I love the challenge of maintaining mental equilibrium and equanimity through wins and losses. And there's a strategy around poker that is extremely mathematical and very market oriented, where you have limited information and you're trying to, make educated guesses, and you're trying to size bets in an educated manner. So the theory is incredibly beautiful and dynamic. So
Generally speaking, one would know that being down is not a good thing, and it tends to get you more down. And by being down, I mean be feeling sorry for yourself and morose and all that kind of stuff. It's not a good state to be. Your spine's probably not straight. Your breath is not. And there's nothing right from the down to your metabolism and the cortisol and your oxygenation. Everything is screwed up all the way through that whole system there. But also, when you have a great year, let's say you're in sales or something like that, that can also mess you up, just like a win in poker, let's say, right? Because it's not only negative excitation or whatever that could throw you off balance, right? A lot of people lose their mojo because last year was so great. Do you have what do you have to say about that? This whole kind of managing the ups and downs, and maintaining that equanimity.
So I'm going to relate this to a common occurrence in the academy. So, so if you're hired on a tenured track, and then there are various versions of this, and some are a little different, but the institution I work at, it is, if you're hired on a tenure track, then you're hired as assistant professor. Then you have basically 4 or 5 years to state your case that they should give you a lifetime appointment. And that's what tenure is a lifetime appointment. So, so you're, first 4 years, you're hustling, you're climbing up a hill, and everything is so focused on this, all of your extra bandwidth, you probably discontinue doing a bunch of stuff so you can spend enough energy and time on this. And then you get to the all-important 4th year review. If that's positive, then you're either up or out at the 6th year review, right? So the 6th year review, they either say, yes, we want you, and it's a voting process. It's a blind voting process where you don't know who voted for you and who voted against you. And then if you get a positive vote, then you get tenure. If you get a negative vote, then you get 1 more year to find another job. Okay? It's an incredible amount of stress, right? It's really very stressful. So you put in you're working so hard. Then what happens to a lot of folks is they get tenure, and then it's like, now what? And so many folks actually
they lose their mojo.
Or they experience depression. They actually start, it's like, oh, I don't know what's going,
They weren't taking care of themselves. They weren't, they were bottling. Yeah, it was a.
Or even if the thing is even if they were totally taking care of themselves, they were eating right, they were sleeping well, because of the magnitude of the achievement, and now you got it. It's like, okay, well, what's going to occupy all of my energy and resources for the next, So that's why, I tell folks, you want to have goals, and even goals that are very significant, consequential goals. You have to replace those goals immediately. You have to have another goal already in mind.
Yeah, you gotta have some side quests.
You must. If you don't, you're, yeah, it's not going to be good.
Mm.
Yeah, and one of my colleagues went up for tenure like the year before I did, and so we have had our conversations about that, and she experienced that for sure. That sort of that kind of not we're not talking about I'm not talking about a clinical depression. I'm just talking about a sort of almost a what is it? What do you call it? A not a challenge. Um, okay, so purpose. It's like right. So it's like a huge part of your purpose has been achieved. So you really need another. You really need a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's a pretty important thing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You really do need a purpose. So, anyhow,
Yeah, I mean, because the desire, satisfaction, ennui, which is the French word, and then desire cycle. I mean that happens on small levels, and we noticed that. I guess this is just one that was so massive, right? So big. You were in this particular frame. All other frames were kind of nested within this big this big
or totally
tenure frame.
obliterated, or totally
Yeah,
obliterated,
totally.
just totally supplanted by.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and everything you do in terms of even simple frames such as wake up and eat, and then this,
Yeah,
all
that's
those
right.
are in service to
That's
the
right.
bigger
Everything.
frame of the bigger desire, and then boom, and then there's that kind of like empty feeling. Yeah, that's why obviously, yeah, you got to have side quests and other things. You're like, okay, well, I guess now I gotta go dust up the old whatever clarinet. I don't know.
Uh,
Something. Um, but yeah, the getting psyched out also by being giddy with success. Basically, one of the simple lessons is the hubris, and losing it all. Got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. After all, you're talking about poker, right? That kind of thing. And hubris is one kind of way to get psyched out. But another way is, especially with sales, is because you have to perform better next year. Is so the performance anxiety, right? Screws you, right? In poker, you can always like lay down. That one is a different kind of thing where you're like, okay, you got to know when to fold, you got to know when to bow out, got to know when you cut your losses, or take your
know
wins.
when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Exactly.
Know when to,
But when it's something
is
that you perform at 9 today, but then tomorrow you got to hit 10, and that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff can kind of psych you out, where you're like, oh crap. Anyways,
yeah, I got to read some lyrics for us now. I got to read some lyrics. Let's see here. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There will be time enough for counting when the dealing is done.
I would encourage everybody to learn to play the game, especially anybody who's interested in investing, because it will test both sides of your brain, the quantitative part about how to think about risk and risk management, and the emotional part about how to deal with loss. And if you can get to a good place on those two dimensions, you can be an incredible investor, I think. And poker is a great way for me to test where I am in that at any given point in time. I worked at an investment bank for a year trading interest rate derivatives. It was incredibly important for everything I did later on. But then literally what happened was I got zero bonus one year or that year because my ego was a little out of control. And another huge blessing in disguise. And so I just applied to all these jobs, I said, I have nothing to lose to stay here. And I got a job at Tipco, I think, and eBay, and a small music startup. And it was a 11 or 12 person company. And I thought, the music startup, I'll have a better edge because I'm one of 11 24-year-olds, whereas everybody else, I'd be working for much older people. I didn't really know the political dynamics. And so that's how my career started. I worked at this small company. It was part of AOL. I rose through the ranks at AOL. I ran the instant messaging business there. During that time, I did a big deal between AOL and Facebook. That's how I met Zuck in 2005, 2006, through my friend Sean Parker. And then I joined Facebook, and I worked there for 11 years. Oh, sorry, for 5 years.
You're
until
not sweet
2011.
just because you call him by a nickname Zuck. That doesn't mean, that doesn't make you better than me.
He
You're not better
said you're
than me.
He said you're nobody.
he said, I bet you didn't even know that he had a nickname. I know it, and it's Zuck.
Yeah, me and Zuck don't know you. We don't know who you are.
AOL. I ran the instant messaging business there. During that time, I did a big deal between AOL and Facebook. That's how I met Zuck in 2005, 2006, through my friend Sean Parker. And then I joined Facebook, and I worked there for 11 years. Oh, sorry, for 5 years until 2011. And then in 2011, I said, Bill, I had learned at that point how to build businesses and how to build startups within businesses, but I'd never started my own startup. And so, I kind of put these two passions together. I'd always wanted to be an investor. I'd always wanted to be in Silicon Valley. I really wanted to figure out how to start my own business. And so that's how Social Capital came together in 2011, June of 2011. And I've been doing it ever since now, for almost 12 years. I do early stage investments, late stage investments, crossover investments, and in some select cases, public investments. But this
reminds me of something that on Sunday's Case Closed, okay? Case Closed, that's 4 p.m. Eastern time, every Sunday.
Yes.
Right?
That's correct.
MOT mentioned this last one about having operations. He called it operations manager level understanding of whatever particular sector or thing that you do, because the money is not in the working in your hours. The money is in the process. That whatever it is, whether it's a wedding, you work in the cake industry, work in the flower industry, the process of getting flowers from wherever the hell they come from, okay, to this and that, and then the supply chain, and then who pays whom and whom is liable for what, that whole process, and the person that puts it together is the person that gets paid. It's not how many hours you slave away in the cake business. It's the person who understands how to take batter and this and that and bank accounts and exchange and salesmanship and whatever and make a cake business, right? So I think that what do you think about the idea of when you're doing something, if you're going to be in something, you're found, your weaknesses and your biases, you're doing what you got to do. The importance of learning this operations manager level, as MOT would put it, or what he just said, knowing how the business actually works and how you can actually put it together. Even if you're not going to start your own, is it important to know this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's very important. So two sides of this, or two things come to mind. One is, if you're going to elevate to the position of a boss, having knowledge of each position underneath you is important, so you know what qualities the ideal person would have to do that job well. So that's one thing. The other thing, and also to know if someone's stealing, if someone is doing something they shouldn't be doing, you'd have an idea of where to look if $1 billion goes missing. So that's one. And then the second thing is, let's see here. by just sort of understanding the overall principle that the number of hours that you work is not what actually is generating the money. It's the
Mm.
deal. It's the
Mhm.
deal. When the deal is complete, it's when the client is satisfied, and it doesn't matter how many hours you spent in that exchange. It matters if they're satisfied. You know, I have a number of these, and I think I mentioned it was probably, I don't know if it was last week or it could have been on Case Closed or something. I don't remember at this point. But we were talking about how I have some projects that I'm going to be doing for this Christmas season and beyond, where it's not possible to be two places at once, right? But it doesn't matter, because the way that the stuff is contracted, I don't have to be there, though I'm providing the intellectual property. The art is being written by me. The music is being written by me. The people are being booked. They will be at the various locations. And this is for a church that has multiple campuses, right? So, but I won't even be there. I'll be somewhere else, right? When the stuff is actually going down, and I'll be involved in rehearsal, at least at one of the venues. But other than that, I won't be around.
Mhm.
So my point is that what's getting me paid is not how many hours it takes me to write the music. And it's not even how many hours the service is. It's the transmission, it's the delivery of the product, and then it's their satisfaction with it, and then that's it, and that's all that matters. So the next time I do it, and hopefully you get asked to do it again. The next time I do it, same deal. I won't have to be there, X, Y, and Z. I can actually be making more money somewhere else, doing something else, So yeah, I just think that so those are the two things I got out of it.
Yeah, the deliverables thing, to kind of just rephrase the idea of knowing how the deliverables get delivered and
Right.
why the person, right, that is paying for this, like, why are they paying for this stuff? And if you're working, you may be
Mm.
working at the accounts payable department or whatever department of some kind of organization, maybe a company that is in Silicon Valley, or maybe it's a company that's in manufacturing, whatever it is. That question is very important in terms of your advancement in general, and also maybe in particular in terms of your advancement there. And there will just be one particular iteration by which you will learn for your advancements in general. But you got to know how those deliverables get delivered. If you're working at McDonald's, one thing that shout out to Grant Cardone, he always says a crude way. Well, he talks about, well, knowing, well, wherever you're doing, ask who gets paid the most. Like, find out who the person that is there that gets paid the most, and then find out why. And if you look at it from from a particular way, okay, you might find that to be kind of maybe crude or strange, but what it will lead you to is this very thing that we're talking about. It'll lead you to exactly where the money exchange is happening, because typically that's where those are who get paid the most, are the people closest to the money, or making the market or whatever. So making the deal happen, as you're saying, right?
Making the deal happen, and people that in the academy, they'd have you believe that there is no shortcut, but there are shortcuts. And the shortcut usually has to do with bringing in huge dollars to the university. If you are involved in bringing in, landing some big endowments or something, for the for whatever for the university, yeah, that's going to be your shortcut to a lot of things, to having a certain kind of access, and that is the deliverable, you know. um and I've seen folks at different institutions by virtue of the fact that they were able to bring in big money from corporations and things like that. uh you know it had a look, professor salaries are public record, at least at public institutions, so you can kind of track stuff. You can say, well, in this year,
Public whitest.
such and such brought this in. Oh, wait a minute. Ooh, they got a nice bump there. So there's a direct relationship between those things. And there ought to be. I mean, you can kind of look at it with a side eye, but there's, it ought to be. But it tells you what game you should be playing. You shouldn't be playing the game that keeps you basically hidden, laboring in obscurity, making sure that you're doing all the proper bean counting. That stuff ain't going to get you paid. That does not get you paid. Now they try to act like that gets you paid, in your annual reviews and stuff. They try to act like that's what getting paid. That ain't what getting you paid. The cats that are making the big money, they found a way to get it happening. And also, a lot of these standards that these institutions have about who can be hired in a professor position and the credentials they need to have, that also is negotiable depending on certain deliverables. Let's go.
Value for value, I guess, out there. It's turtles all the way down.
Unifying theme are twofold. One is that I try to partner with really compelling entrepreneurs that I believe have the potential to build something great. And number two is I try to underwrite a business that is early in a theme that is much, much bigger than themselves, right? Which can create a lot of value. The problem is that I think people misunderstood what I was doing and interpreted it as essentially, a very simple mechanism to capture some economic value.
Chamath is a highly successful entrepreneur and venture capitalist and was ranked 10th on Forbes magazine list of new billionaires this year. After finding social capital in 2011 to invest in companies in fields being ignored by other venture capitalists like health, financial services, and education, his firm has since expanded to invest in tech companies like Amazon.
Which, by the way, so the name of his company obviously is Social Capital, right? And I find it funny. It's not really funny because he's quite honest about the fact that is marketing, but also that that is the niche he's trying to fill. So from a market business standpoint, like, okay, cool. There are certain long shot type investments in health XYZ that the money is not particularly going after right now. We could brand them as being social, right? or whatever. And you already know probably that. I mean, I guess we can stretch our minds to probably brand anything social, right? Anything kind of in that, wrap it in the cloak of mother and apple pie or whatever, right? So he has kind of done that, and he invests in these particular kind of areas. And I just find
financial justice. Financial justice.
Because and the video is about to end, but when he went that way, and when he started talking about, oh, people saw it as me just trying to accumulate capital. It's like, well, yeah, trust me, Chabad, I don't blame you for like, because it kind of goes back. Look, he has to do this thing, huh? It's not like he could just ignore the fact that people will always look at you and question you if you are operating at certain heights as he is operating, let's say, right? Whatever that may be. And people start talking about, well, are you just a cold devil, right? Because there tends to be in a certain way, there's a similarity between competence and tyranny. There's a certain sharpness to both of them that confuses people's minds a lot, right? So um, that is one aspect of what's going on. The rest is just, just kind of the rest is just kind of like a social thing, envy, right? Let me pull you down,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. So if he's gonna play this, or I'm gonna do social capital, or I'm actually gonna find this niche in the market, he does have to also play the people's emotion and say stuff like, I'm not accumulating capital, as though he wasn't accumulating capital. Or do you really believe that he's, or am I just kind of over here ranting? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's a good play. It sort of uh, it distracts people from the fact that uh, he's a billionaire, like any other billionaire that owns a company with a less socially conscious sounding name. Uh, you know, and like I was saying, we could start a company called something like Financial Justice, and we could have like as part of the logo, we could have like an image of like Che Rivera or something, and then and,
We
and
can start Black Lives
but
Matter.
yeah, but just be like another company like Amazon or something. Just don't even donate to any causes.
Just because financial justice. It's like our boy at Alameda Research, a hedge fund.
Oh goodness.
A hedge fund in the Bahamas called Alameda Research. He researched the hell out of your money. Anyways, let's play the end of this. This was a good one. I think, because they kind of focused the main idea here being that strength and weaknesses thing, and then going into the mental / emotional balance aspect with the poker game deal, and then now talking about being able to understand from an operations manager level and then build something, which he actually did. And that point about not being able to make the money, there's certain professionals, especially a lot of professionals in the tech industry, or people are sold, get into STEM because it's like, you'll get this paycheck or something. And generally speaking, it's a good path, right? Like, okay, sure. But then you might realize, because the thing about STEM is you're going to be working a lot, like just a lot. And you're kind of used to that because, you went to school for it and it was a lot of work the whole time anyways. But the thing is, the value that you're actually getting, plus having to live, let's say, for example, let's just stick with, the tech world, and you're living in a place that's going to be expensive because wherever this thing starts popping, right? Silicon Valley or whatever, or now even Austin, things are going to be expensive there, and you're working a lot, blah, blah, blah. But if you knew, again, what the deliverables are in this tech world that is making billions and able to give you a somewhat cushy job, then you would be making the billions as he did, for example, rather than, working really, really, really hard, at Facebook and driving a nice Tesla and living in a nice area over there in Palo Alto. But you're not, you're not really getting the value out of what's around you there. Anyways.
Nope.
Amazon, Tesla, and Slack. Chamath has created platforms to provide an alternative growth path for companies to go public while continuing to make public and private investments with a broader focus on crypto and decentralized finance. What do you guys think about Chamath's financial journey so far? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Library of Wealth.
Hey, back up a little bit.
Crap.
Yeah, you go back up a little bit, man. This is funny.
I'll pull it back up. Yeah, what are you gonna catch him on?
So there's some charts behind this woman, some moving images. It look like graphs and stuff, but it's just like it's like all images, but it's not. There's like no information. There's no data. It's like
it's just hold on one second. I closed the window, so I'm opening. Seek and ye shall find. So let's go back a little bit.
Right there, like right there.
Right here.
No.
Okay, I'll
Yeah, just play a little bit. Keep going. Stop there.
Oh, okay.
No,
I'll
go.
go back to. There's a slight delay in terms of, but I know what you mean now, so I'll stop it then.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
what are these?
like what is that stuff?
Let's crack this code. This is Da Vinci. This is the Da Vinci Code right here, dude. If you know, I mean, that little, you see the little chandelier at the top there. The chandelier, that represents actually. Anyways, no, I'm not even there.
Anyhow,
Yeah, good catch.
yeah,
Good.
That's funny.
Catch indeed.
All right. Well, yeah, this has been a good one.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Thunder, what was it
Yes.
that who was you were you doing again on Thunder's Thoughts? Or
Yeah, I got this thing right here. It's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Right here. Yeah. Okay, get rid of the there we go. So Passport Bros versus
This guy.
Game Bros, aka Bobby Womack versus Swag.
Now, who's your guest?
My guess is none other than Black Ram 313.
And what is he supposed to represent? Is he a Passport Bro? Or is he a Game Bro?
Yeah, he's definitely. Oh, right. Yeah, he's definitely a Passport Bro.
Oh,
He's definitely a Passport Bro. He's definitely in that. But he's one of the OGs of the Black Manosphere.
So you're not gonna
You see
bring
that-
in a game representative? You're not gonna be fair?
Oh well, I usually just have the one guest, but I am going to take a look at a few videos as is the usual. I'll take a look at we'll take a look at a couple videos. Probably take a look at an article. I'm going to play a clip from my recent Wayne Shorter concert, which was last week, which was great. Totally sold out. Great concert. Actually, that's what's playing right here behind me. But it's behind a paywall now. You got to be a member at the Bachelor of Music level if you want to go see that video, or you can see a clip tomorrow night. You can see one of the selections from the concert as the pre-show on tomorrow night's Thunder's Thoughts. And see, what else was I going to say? For the Simp Anthem of the week, it's not really a Simp Anthem. It's very loose. We're going to take a look at If You Think You're Lonely Now, Bobby Womack. And I have a slight re-lyricking, which is very Passport Bro esque. And that is, if you think you're lonely now, wait until this flight, girl.
Damn.
So
All right.
It's gonna be it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a great show. Been looking forward to this. Black Ram is like I said, he's one of the OGs. Heavy dude. We'll have a lot of stuff to discuss, and then of course, Case Closed will be on my channel, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this coming Sunday. We'll have again a trending topic with an all-star panel. So really looking forward to that. It's going to be great. So come back tomorrow night for Thunder's Thoughts. Also, Car Thunder, right? So come tomorrow morning for Car Thunder. I've been keeping these coming. Pretty much been going Monday through Friday. And as of right now, I'm not sure the topic I'm going to cover, but there's a couple things that are brewing, and I'll deal with. Actually, I kind of do know the topic, and this is going to be a less sort of a salacious kind of topic than a couple of the topics that I've covered over the last week or so. But this is going to be more like this idea of pursuing truth. I happen to believe that the pursuit of truth, not your truth, not my truth, but the truth, capital T truth. In other words, the nature of reality, uncovering and discovering the nature of true reality, right? So this kind of truth, I believe that to be prerequisite to any sort of faith, religious faith or anything. I believe it to be prerequisite. And matter of fact, in the New Testament of the Bible, it describes Jesus as being the way, the truth, the life, right? And no one can get to the Father but through him. And I see that as not just a literal statement, but a metaphorical statement, right? So he's truth being just, in relationship to, discovering the nature of true reality. If that is not a priority, then there is no pathway to God, as it were. You can't climb the ladder. So I see that as an angle. I also see the angle of there's a quote here. I'll read this. It's out of a poem by a guy. See here, C.T. Studd, and one of the lines reads, "Only one life 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last." And in that, I don't see that as just a sort of dogmatic religiosity, sort of thing. But I also see it as you could substitute, pursuit of truth, will last. Only the pursuit of truth will last. And you can unpack the word for, the word of God as being logos and logic. And so there's lots of different pathways to get sort of to the same point, which is the most critically important thing that anybody can do is to, with reckless abandon and with assertiveness, with intensity, no holds barred, is pursue truth at all consequence, with whatever the consequence is, whatever happens, however it changes things, that must be the goal. That pursuit.
So you do know your. Well, sounds like a good one.
Yeah. So I've been kind of stewing on this, thinking about it. I had my last lesson, one of my students, and we ended up talking about a variety of things. And this was one of the topics that we sort of arrived at eventually, was that whole relentless pursuit of truth. And these days, what that may mean, and often it does mean, is that you're going to have to take sides. You will not be able to stay on the fence. People will force you to take a side, and you need to be willing to die on that hill. Whatever the cross is, you need to be willing to, be nailed to it. Whatever it is, that's just what it is. Because if it is the case that there is an eternal life to gain and eternal damnation to shun, then it seems to me that we're being tested now for what could be an eternity. So, I don't know.
You don't know?
And I know it sounds all deep. And I know it sounds all deep and perhaps sounds polemic or something, but it's not really about, the point is not really about what the particular religion is. It's actually, I believe, more axiomatic than that. It's about just this basic precept of pursuing truth. And whatever that means, if you're not at least willing to do that, there's nowhere to arrive.
Yeah, it's I like how you ended it there, because it's a through line. As you were speaking, I was talking about, like, I was thinking through, to use certain loose, low-level philosophical terms in terms of the epistemologically down to even the ethics and the aesthetics of things. It is that thing that just cuts all the way through. It's always, you cannot be, are you going to be, where is deception? Besides the Nietzschean argument, the Nietzschean argument off to the side, where is a kind of deception preferred? Where is this type of untruth, blah, blah, blah? Because Nietzsche was doing something which I think was deeper than that, talking about basically our ability to, I think, for example, if you talk about Jordan Peterson, a certain aspect of Jordan Peterson is right in line with Nietzschean stuff. Because Nietzsche was kind of like one of the first Western psychologists, right? Talking about our perception of reality, right? And I'm I'm obviously going to just shorthanding and caricaturing some particular aspect of something, that why do we think that which, for example, perpetuates your life, or shall we say satisfies your hunger, or shall we say keeps a particular type of order which you like, right, in a particular status of society or a particular time under a particular, whatever it may be, right? Why do you think that thing is necessarily the good, platonic good? That notion, like, look, that notion of pointing to the humanness of it all, of this endeavor. He was the first to kind of point out to basically saying, hey, utilitarianism is the philosophy of the stomach. Like, that's just about, hey, how do we make sure that my stomach gets it, and everybody get, certain things like that. Like that, these things are, anyways, yeah, they're deeply part of the organism. So that's, I find to be, the most important aspect of the Nietzschean argument, which I think then Jung and then Jordan Peterson now are really good at. Kind of like, oh, the way you perceive the world is, yeah, and all that kind of good stuff. But now you got me off track, Dr. Thunder.
Yeah, no, this is gonna be great. So you gotta make sure you come back. I know it's gonna be really early for you, but you don't sleep though, so you're good.
Yeah, I have some crazy stuff. I have this letter I gotta write for some litigious stuff going on.
Wait a minute. So you got an issue with the apology? You drafting your apology? They're making you apologize, man.
Apologizing to whom exactly?
No, because that's what they make you do when they're trying to cancel you.
Oh,
you got to issue your apology.
Maybe Plato's apology and drink my hemlock.
You didn't say any anti-Semitic stuff recently, did you? Because they kind of going after some brothers right now.
From Jays to Negroes.
Right. Oh goodness gracious! Did you see Chappelle's thing on SNL?
No. I guess
Yeah,
I
it's
should,
good. It's good, and I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it like live or anything. But I started with his monologue, and now I'm kind of working through some of the sketches. It's pretty much all on YouTube. But his monologue was really good. He uniquely has the way to say stuff that you're not allowed to say, but in such a way that he is so brilliant. Like nobody else could have said what he said. And kind of got away with it, like in the light of the sort of heat on a particular issue right now. He's the cat, man. He's such a master at this. And you keep waiting. Look, you keep waiting for this guy. You keep waiting for when is it going to be that this guy, like, they finally get this cat. Like he finally went too far. Like he finally said something. Because even with the supposed like insensitive stuff or jokes about the transgender stuff that he was getting, supposedly in trouble about, you can't cancel the cat. You can't touch this cat. And then he ends up on SNL, and it's a bunch of lefties over there. So it's like, dude.
Yeah, he plays. Well, one aspect which is not a play, right, is this kind of big sacrifice which he did, and it tends to be great in terms of being uncancelable. Let's just kind of say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
The sacrifice obviously was, leaving Comedy Central, doing the whole Africa thing, and then surviving and then being able to come back, right? That gives you a whole lot of social capital, right? Obviously, it doesn't last forever, and also if you play it well, authenticity, the whole. Anyways, yeah. So I think that he does play it well, right? That he is kind of careful, right? And because of his particular skill with saying the obvious thing, which we all kind of know, right? He has the skill, he has the position, and he also has the willingness, it seems, to want to communicate, right? Because there's some people who are probably just like, F this, I'm not even, you get what I'm saying? Like, he actually seems to have had both the skill, the ability to communicate, and also the willingness to actually want to say the things that we all kind of like know, which are kind of obvious, like break things down and say, hey, look, these are the obvious things that like, why are we making it weird? It doesn't have to be weird.
No, it doesn't.
Let's be honest, intellectually honest. Let's otherwise, it's not like we got it all figured out. We've been killing ourselves ever since we know our history, and we're still killing ourselves. Why are we acting as though we got it figured out, right? That we got this whole kind of harmony thing figured out. We obviously don't.
It just seems like the stuff that it's just so abstract. It just appears abstract. The stuff that will get you canceled when you can willy-nilly say all kinds of atrocious, ridiculous stuff about Black people in general, Black men in particular. You can go ham. You can do whatever you want. But as soon as you touch, even appear to touch certain communities, it seems that the Asian community seems like has some sort of halo, and obviously the Jewish community. It's just you can't mess with that. You just can't mess with that, and it's quite. Now you understand. I mean, without totally spelling it out, there's a particular reason why that is. And part of that is based on the relative, at least the perceived relative value of folks from certain communities. That obviously is the case, and if you're going to, but it's just very abstract. It's very abstract, and it doesn't make a lot of sense why you need to tippy toe around certain topics that are just, it's obvious. Everybody is looking at this, right? Everybody sees what's happening. Everybody sees what's here. Nobody's going to talk about the person in the background that's got a gun pointed at somebody. That person right there, nobody. It's like that. It's like you're not allowed to point that guy out. It's like, get out of here. Why are you talking about somebody pointing the gun? It's like, what? What are we doing? Am I the only one in here that sees this? Nobody else sees this?
I mean,
It's like that.
you know,
It's like, what?
yeah, I mean, prior to the show, we were talking about making some general observation too about human beings and how they react in social contexts, right? And saying that, you know, over and over and over again, whether it be from an empirical standpoint, or you want to read all kinds of literature from all over the world all the time, seeing people doing crazy things and be seemingly possessed is the norm. It's not, you know, it's not. This is kind of how it is. But we seem to every day wake up and be like, oh, well, no, but I think people are rational. And then we see it's like, yeah, but look over there, and no one sees it. Shout out to Scott Adams. He talks about, you know, that people, you know, he likes to make analogies. He's a creative Dilbert, so he likes to like draw things, simplify things, blah blah blah. But he always talks about the one screen, two movies type stuff. That people are not watching the same movie you're watching. Like it's the same screen, right? But they're not seeing. They're not seeing it. You know. And if you're patient enough and generous enough, you can see what there's. You can, especially let's say if you have a higher level sight, right? You can see what they're seeing. You can see the plane that they're stuck in. And unfortunately, there's just going to be a whole lot of people just stuck in their planes, and hence the killing of ourselves, which we still haven't figured out, right? Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we are out. This was a good one. I think this was we started out talking about your skills, ended up with social capital and all that kind of good stuff.
All right.
And make sure you check out Dr. Thunder. Check out Dr. Thunder tomorrow. Check out Dr. Thunder every day. Go ahead, subscribe, become a member so that you can get the spicy stuff that is behind the paywall and all that good stuff.
Right.
Peace.